Dacian language is an extinct language, generally thought to be Indo-European, spoken in the Carpathian mountain region, basically present-day Romania, a few of the surrounding bits. This is ben.llywelyn. That is what we are talking about today. When deciding which video to make for you, I came across the Dacian language, and what struck me about it was that there's almost nothing on YouTube about it. And so I thought, let's make a video about this. Now obviously one of the reasons why there's not really anything on YouTube about it, there's a bit in Romanian, by the way, if you speak limba romana. But in English there's hardly anything. And that's because there's hardly anything left of the language, as you'll see. But what is this Dacian language? Where did it come from? Where was it? And what do we have left of it? There are a couple different theories about what the Dacian language was. It's generally, as I said, thought to be Indo-European. But there's definitely an underlayer to present-day Romanian, which is spoken where mostly the Dacian language was. That's not quite like other languages, and they've thought, well, this comes from Dacian, but where did that come from? When Indo-Europeans came in to Europe, there was already an ancient culture here. The earliest metallurgy was in the Balkan region. This was an ancient civilization by the time the Indo-Europeans had come, around the year 4000 BC or so. But around 2000 years, 2500 years ago, we think these people emerged out of what was already here in the pre-Indo-European sense, taking in some of their elements. Where Dacian would emerge was in this great long Danube River Valley, and this was a region of many different cultures going back and forth, so there would clearly be many influences upon the Dacian language even from its birth. But in present-day Romanian, there are words that are kind of similar between Lithuanian in the north and Albanian in the south, and this is where I'm getting at with the Dacian language. This was on an arc, some kind of continuum that we've lost, connecting the Baltic languages and Albanian, and it was probably the middle branch between those language groups. As far as place, it was definitely along the Danube River Valley, the lower Danube, and the Dacian heartland appears to have emerged in the southwest of the Carpathian Mountains, going up towards the Apuseni Mountains. We don't have much from documentation about this language, so let's go first into the history of these people, so you get a context of who they were, when they were, and just how much of a fight they put up against Rome. Just a brief run of their history and a brief change of scenery. I needed to clean my kitchen and I feel a lot better now. So about the history, by about 1000 BCE, the Dacian language was established as the most dominant language north of the river Danube. However, between 400 and 250 BCE, the Celts further west, Gaul, southern Germany, they were immigrating, expanding into Transylvania, where they established a kingdom, certainly by 250. And this lasted all the way up until 60 BCE. What happened then? You had a king, a Getic king, Burebista, who confederated the Getic and Dacian tribes together and pushed out the Celts from Transylvania when their power collapsed around 60 BCE. And from this time, the Dacian language really begins to prosper and flourish, we believe. There's an expansion of these place names, and there's an emergence of a defensive network around a capital, Zarmazigetush, in this iron gate between the Carpathian Mountains and the Apuseni. It's a very defensive position, and they built a network of forts there. I mean, this is an impregnable region if you have a solid army, and they use this to really expand their power. And of course, this came into contact and confrontation with Rome, which they fought 3 wars, depending on how you look at it. The first beginning in 86 of the Common Era, lasting for 2 years. And King Doris, I think that's how you say it, was the king of Dacia in this time, but he had a general, Decebalus, this guy on the screen now. And he defeated 2 legions, and they elected him as king. And he went on to fight 2 more wars against Rome, one sort of a bad ending stalemate for them, and the other one, Rome just threw everything they had at them and like 150,000 men, and you weren't going to defeat that. I mean, come on. I mean, no matter how brave and good you are, you're a small kingdom fighting a kingdom that's spanning between Portugal and Iraq. I mean, that's not fair, is it? And they lost their independence, and certainly by 200, the language, the Dacian language, was marginalized, pushed back to the fringes in the mountains. As a language loses and gradually goes extinct, it becomes the language of the farming people. We see that over and over in history. However, Rome withdrew in 275 from north of the Danube to consolidate their borders, but Dacia didn't have a chance to reestablish itself. They had Goths coming in, Germanic peoples, by 300. And then, just 2 centuries later, you had Slavs pouring in from the northeast, establishing new kingdoms. So if these 2 waves of mass migrations, the Dacians didn't really have a chance. And by 600, 700 at the latest, the Dacian language had been marginalized out of existence. And that's the fate of it. But what do we have in terms of documentation? We don't have any writing in the Dacian language, and we don't really have much written about the Dacian language. We have mentions in Latin and Greek. One thing we do have, which is quite unusual, is a grouping of plant names, about 60, by a physician named Dioscordes, a Greek physician who served in the Roman army, which was not uncommon at the time, and this was in the 1st century, when Rome was really moving into that area slowly in the south of present-day Romania. And here are some of those plant names for you. We don't have much at all in Dacian, but here are a few of those words. Amelusta is chamomile, like you put in your tea. Drakontos, or maybe drakontos, for rosemary. Maybe they like lamb. Ooh, that would be tasty, rosemary and lamb. For nettles, like stinging nettles. You don't have this in the Americas, but it's a type of plant that is a bit annoying. If you're wearing shorts and your ankles are exposed, you get little fiery lumps. Din. And for anyone who speaks Welsh, this is quite eerie, because the word for nettles in Welsh is dynadl, and it used to be spelled with a Y, and it used to be dynad in Welsh. That's eerie, isn't it? It doesn't mean that Dacian was Celtic, but it does suggest that Welsh, we know, is a very conservative language, and there was Celtic influence upon Dacian, we know that. So maybe at some point there was a crossover. And then you get elderberry, that's tasty, ceba. So that's just a few of them. We don't have much, but there you go. We also have about 1,150 personal names, like people's names, scattered around through references in Latin and Greek, and at least 900 for certain toponyms or place names, rivers, mountains, settlements that are certainly coming from this Dacian language. When you see the ending dava in Romania today, some in Bulgaria, some in Moldova, which we're not sure if Moldova does come from Dacian. It might be Slavic, but this comes from the word for a settlement, a fortification in Dacian. These were seriously thoughtful people in terms of building defensive settlements. As you saw from the history, they were preparing for a long confrontation with Rome. And, well, to conquer them took 150,000 people being sent in by the most technologically advanced empire the world had ever seen. These people were hard. But the simple matter of fact is we don't even know how to say yes and no, or to ask you a question, or to say what day it is in Dacian. We have no idea. You had a language common in the pre-Roman era called Thracian, mainly around Thrace and present-day Bulgaria. Now this was just to the south of the Dacian territories, and for a long time people have thought this is related to Dacian, but that Dava word I mentioned, that's not really existent in this Thracian regions, and there's no substratum cognates really that's pre-Slavic between Bulgarian and Romanian or Albanian. And there's no evidence to suggest that these two languages, although they're both Indo-European, we think, there's no evidence to suggest that they were linked in terms of being on the same branch. And for a long time people thought that, but looking at it myself and just learning a bit of Romanian, I don't think that these two, Thracian and Dacian, were related. Oh, by the way, Thracian, it went out, certainly extinct, by about 600 AD. Celtic. Now, as I mentioned in the Celtic bit, the Celts moved into Transylvania, and there was a substantial kingdom of some kind in present-day Transylvania that was Celtic in origins, culturally and linguistically. But if you want a video on that, Celts in Transylvania, I think that might be cool, let me know. However, this we know is a different culture because the burial customs were different, and there's fewer than 100 Celtic toponyms or place names in this region, which you would expect a lot more if the Celtic presence was spread over the centuries and continuous. Also, you had that fellow Burbista. He apparently united the Dacian peoples and pushed them out. This was a conflict between two different cultures. What it did do, however, is leave an imprint upon Dacian, which in my opinion left an imprint upon present-day Romanian. Because as a Welsh speaker, there's bits of Romanian that are, it's a bit deeper of a connection than the Latin. It's almost like the way in which the Dacians absorbed Latin was similar to the way in which the Welsh absorbed Latin. I can't really put it in much more terms than that, and this video is not about the Welsh. To cut to the chase about the Celts, this is not a Celtic language, though that has been suggested by a few people. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. What about the next ancient language that people compare this to? Illyrian. Illyrian is commonly thought to be the ancestor of present-day Albanian. My own position on this is that Illyrian and Dacian were two very closely related languages, and that they were in the process of moving apart when Rome came. Another ancient language that people often look at as where did this come from is Gothic. And this is a Germanic language. And the Germanic peoples did certainly move into Romania, present-day Romania, in 600 or so. Dacian, we think, was dying off by this point, certainly, as a living language. The timelines just don't add up. Firstly, Romanian. It's really difficult to look at Romanian deeply, getting under the stones of where it comes from, without thinking that there's something else here that's not quite Latin in origin. I mean, you have words like bronza for cheese, which is like, where does that come from? I mean, it clearly does not come from a Germanic or Latin root, that word. But just one on its own wouldn't mean anything. You get a word for dragon, balaur. This seems like an older Indo-European root that kind of found a way into the Romanian language from the Dacian language. And there are quite a few words like this across Romanian, and it really does make the Romanian language a bit special, a bit distant. Part of what makes Romanian so beautiful as a language is that there is clearly an underlayer of this Dacian language in it. What about comparing Dacian to other modern languages? Well, of course, I've mentioned Albanian. You can go on YouTube and there are several videos, quite a few, comparing Albanian and Romanian. Just because there are so many cognates or similar words that are related to each other between the two languages, there's clearly something there. And I'll just give you one, like for a fir tree, in Romanian, brad, and in Albanian, bread. That's basically the same word, and you get that over and over and over again. And it's not like these are on the same branch of the Indo-European language. It's that there's something in the underlayer of Romanian that is related to Albanian. I couldn't really find any videos on YouTube about this subject in English, not really much, so I wanted to give you one. And I hope that however short this is, it suffices for the lack of videos available about the Dacian language here on YouTube. Thank you for watching to the end of this video. I hope that you liked it. If you want to support this channel, because I need your help, please hit that join button, and for just a couple pounds a month or a couple dollars, you can help support the channel. If you would like to donate officially, there is my Patreon page, patreon.com/ben.llywelyn, and you can join me on Patreon at different levels of membership. I'm trying to set that up and see where we can go, but I am moving house soon, so it will be a future project as we build the channel, and hopefully we can get you some benefits for your patronage and your enjoyment in the future. Hey, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next episode.